Opening up the mailbag, I asked you guys to submit questions on Twitter, and we're going to cover the free agency / trade portions of those questions today on Locked On Pacers. We're talking more about the Westbrook Pacers stuff, Miles Turner's fit and role with this team, stuff the Pacers could still do, trades that still could be out there via your questions on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers as always. My name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and the Westside Community News, and today it's Mailbag Day. I love doing these in the offseason to hear what people want to know more about, discuss the topics that fans are interested in. And now that we have reached the point of the offseason where likely nothing to happen, although the Westbrook stuff popped up out of nowhere over the weekend, I felt like this was a good time to do it. So today, I got questions from you guys on Twitter. I got about 20 of them. Today, we'll do the team building portion of those questions. So Thursday show, there's a day in the middle with a guest. Thursday show will be the on-court, how the Pacers will play, how players will develop kind of questions. Today will be the team-building questions. So lots of Russell Westbrook today, lots of trade stuff today, lots of free agency stuff today, and quite a hefty amount also of Miles Turner today. So you won't want to miss all these questions as a part of this mailbag. Let's just jump right in. Number one comes from Sad Pacers Kid. Sad names right off the bat from the Twitter sphere, who says, if you could bring one player to the Pacers, who would it be and why? I'm interpreting this in the context of their current roster and free agency and where they are right now, because grand scheme of things, my favorite player ever is John Wall. So he would be my broad strokes answer. I grew up mostly a Wizards fan, and my favorite day was when they won the draft lottery, that they were ultimately able to pick him, and he almost led them to their first conference finals in like 4 decades. So obviously a very soft spot for him. That does not make any sense for the Pacers in their current team context, though. So I'm not going to pick him as my answer to the question seriously. I'm just going to answer it from the heart first. In terms of actual Pacers team building strategy and connecting the dots of what their current roster is, they have the space for anyone who's available, but there's not very many good free agents left. Colin Sexton is good and available, and apparently the report I think this was Chris Fedor from Cleveland.com, 3 years, $40 million is the offer from the Cavs to Sexton. I mean, Sexton is very good, 24 points a game player just 2 seasons ago. I mean, if the Pacers could get him, I guess. I mean, there's enough minutes for him and Haliburton and Mathurin if they play Duarte at the 3 all the time. But they're already young, and filled up backcourt makes that tricky, even though he's a guy that they could pursue. In terms of actually out there guys that I think make some sense, I would say there's 3 things that stand out, 2 names and 1 general thing. Jordan Nwora is still out there, restricted free agent with the Bucks. Just wrapped up his age 22 season. He turns 23 season. He turns 24 in September. 8 points a game last year, 3.6 rebounds, and a 37% 3-point shooter in his career with Milwaukee on basically 300 attempts. So probably about what he's going to be as a shooter, good free throw shooter. Not the awesomest defender, that's a word. Not the best defender ever, but a 6'8 guy who can kind of shoot it, who's still out there, and the Pacers could, in theory, afford him. That makes some sense to me as a pursuit option for them. And in the same vein, Isak Bonga, who spent a lot of time with different teams in his career, the Lakers, the Wizards, the Raptors. Teams keep bringing him in because he's young and can kind of defend on the wing. He's 6'8 as well, and he did just finish his age 22 season. That's why I got the ages confused. He turned 23 in November. 2 young wings who are 6'8 and could, in theory, offer you something if you're the Pacers, maybe steal a rotation spot. That makes sense to me in terms of pursuit and fit on their team right now. And the third thing is a vet, a wily aged vet who knows, wily might not be the best word, a sage aged vet who's been around, maybe has won a championship, all that sort of stuff. Daniel Tice has been on finals teams. Like, he's a decent vet, I suppose. But just another guy who has won a title or been to the finals or been around. Justin Holiday, I think, provided a lot to the Pacers with championship experience in past seasons. Al Jefferson was a good vet for this. McConnell will be, but another one. And Andre Iguodala, Paul Millsap, LaMarcus Aldridge. There's others out there. Someone like that, I think, would make sense to add to this team. Good first question, though, of the guys still available. Question number 2 comes from Lee Plenty at Yahoo, who says, First of all, this offseason podcast episodes to date have been great. Thank you very much. He says, have you heard anything about the Pacers pursuing Cam Reddish via trade? How do you think he would fit with this core if he's made available? Not recently. I think there's been 2 times the Pacers and Reddish have been like kind of strongly linked. I remember last year there was a lot of talk about the Hawks and Pacers swapping picks in the first round, with the Hawks at 20 and the Pacers at 13, and then Reddish and 20 would go to the Pacers. They ultimately picked Duarte. Turns out totally won that exchange. And then I think again before he got dealt last year, there was some chatter about what that would look like. Look, similar to what I just talked about with Nwora and Bonga. Like, this is a 6'8", 22-year-old. Like, if you're the Pacers, that is what you need. The thing with Reddish is he just hasn't put it all together yet. Still sub 40% for his career shooting. Has just not really been a quality play finisher or defender yet in his career. Could project as a shooter. Like, the free throws are there. The stroke looks good, even though it's not awesome all the time. So the Pacers would be, a good spot for him in terms of development if there's a spot in the rotation for him. So maybe in a big trade, right, where the Knicks get involved in a Donovan Mitchell deal or something else, and the team would be getting Reddish in that trade, would rather have a pick than him. Maybe the Pacers could swoop in that way with the Celtics pick they got in the Brogdon deal or the Cavs pick or something, if that's how they wanted to acquire Reddish. I haven't heard anything concrete linking them recently, but they have poked around at that before, and his value is probably pretty low right now on a Knicks team with a bunch of young guys ahead of him in the rotation and that's trying to win now, right? They just spent a bunch of money on Jalen Brunson and Isaiah Hartenstein. They don't have time to be developing Cam Reddish, especially if they get Donovan Mitchell. That does make some sense as a thing that could happen if the Knicks end up making a big move, or in general, if they just decide they'd rather have an asset than a guy like Cam Reddish, who is probably not going to be helping them in the present term. Last one for this segment, as we continue to plow through I should have named the segment. This is what I'm calling the addition segment. And then the next segment is the Russell Westbrook segment. This one I thought was a great question from @JohnnyGargalon, who said, which veteran trade did I like the most for the Pacers in the last 6 months, and least? Rank them, basically, of the 4 vets. So the Sabonis trade, the Torrey Craig trade, the Caris LeVert trade, and the Malcolm Brogdon trade. I thought this was a fascinating question. Look, these all could change because they haven't all been actualized. For example, if the Pacers get the 16th pick from the Cavs next year, that one might move up, because that would be, getting Nembhard and pick 16 in 2023 for LeVert is really good value, given what he was giving the Pacers at that time. So right now I have it ranked as follows. I have the Sabonis trade first. If they get anything for Buddy Hield, it could even look better. But just getting Tyrese Haliburton is a slam dunk deal. He's the face of the franchise now. He could be the face of the franchise for the next 5 years, maybe even longer than that, if things go well and ideally for this Indiana team. And he is special. I have podcasts lined up to talk about his game in August. Like, the number of players who have reached his averages of points, assists, and 3-point percentage in the first couple years of their career is like 7 guys. And all of them, I think, went on to be all-stars. I will reveal all that on a future show. That one's number one. I'm just, maybe more so than most fans and local media, I am irrationally high on Tyrese Haliburton, what his future can be with the Pacers. Thus, I have the Sabonis trade as what I think to be the best one for the Pacers. As of right now, I'll put Torrey Craig at second to get a pick that they sold it off. But if you want to say they used it to move up, 10 spots to get Kendall Brown and Jalen Smith, who they were able to keep for Torrey Craig, that is a good deal. That was a good value trade, especially if Jalen Smith continues to be good for them. But I'll acknowledge that one can move down if Jalen Smith kind of reverts back to who he could be, especially could move down if, because I have this one third, the Caris LeVert trade, if that Cavs pick ends up being good and gives them value. That's why this is always a little hard to rank them now, because a lot could change. But as of now, I'd have the LeVert trade third and the Torrey Craig trade second. Brogdon trades last. Maybe they get something awesome with that Celtics pick, and maybe Nesmith really pops. There are more ways for that one to move up than the LeVert trade to move up. So perhaps I should have flipped those. But in terms of the expected value for the thing they sent out and what they actually got in return, I think that is how I would rank those. I don't think anything can overtake the Sabonis trade for first, but 2, 3, and 4 are interchangeable enough that I could see things happening. Like if Nesmith comes to the Pacers and is an awesome shooter all of a sudden and is giving them the wing defense they've needed for years, that one would move up to second pretty easily. Or if Jalen Smith just doesn't continue his form from last year, or the Cavs miss the playoffs again, then those could all move in order. But I think now that's looking like the most likely long-term order, and definitely the current present term order. That was a good question. I really enjoyed that one. And I think there could be more added to that list if there's a Miles deal or a Buddy Hield deal before the season starts. So really clever question. I enjoyed that one. Let's move on to the second segment, which is all about Russell Westbrook, still the dominating story in Pacerland after Bob Kravitz and Shams Charania's report from over the weekend, including some others now trickling in early this week. Let's talk about some questions about Russell Westbrook and the Pacers. Before we do that, though, I want to talk to you guys about Built Bar, who are making the best tasting protein bars ever. They're basically a candy bar. They're protein bars that are 100% covered in chocolate, and they come in so many awesome flavors. There's something for everybody. If you haven't tried them yet, they also have a Puffs variety. You're depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys. And guess what? There's a new Built Bar flavor, indulgent cookie dough. I have them. I'm really psyched to try them. I got them in a package this weekend. I have not tried them yet. Covered in chocolate, filled with cookie dough. Oh, I'm psyched. The cookie dough chunk puffs have a light and chewy texture, real cookie dough chunks, and of course, 100% covered in that chocolate. And I wouldn't be promoting these if they were just good. They're also healthy. Only 160 calories, a whopping 15 grams of that collagen protein that your body absorbs faster in them. Delicious and healthy. You've got to try them. Tons of listeners have tried them and told me that they really, really enjoyed them. You should be next. Go to Built.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15, and you will get 15% off your order. That promo code, again, is LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. Hey, for your second listen, this one's easy. Locked On Lakers, hear what they're saying about Russell Westbrook and his name being in the news and where this could be headed if the Pacers will even be involved, because now there's more stuff out of Brooklyn. There's more teams potentially interested in Westbrook in Utah, for example. Who knows where this could be headed? The Lakers guys will have you covered. Hey, speaking of Westbrook, though, let's dive right into the Westbrook section of this mailbag show. And Man Mardson asked 3 questions Westbrook adjacent. One of them will be in the next segment, but 2 of them will be right here. And the first one is, what will Russ bring to the Pacers? Will they keep him? So here's the deal. I have said without technically asking anyone that they would not keep him. And that is mostly just based on the fact that it makes no sense for the Pacers to keep him. Here's what I'll say that kind of pushed me that way without literally talking to anyone in the league about this. If you recall, Westbrook just split up with his agent, Thad Foucher, and Thad Foucher released a statement to ESPN and said, hey, it would be, part of what we talked about, and maybe is what I believe to be damaging to my client's images if he gets traded and bought out. That PR hit does a lot to hurt your value. Kemba Walker's dealing with that right now. Kemba Walker was bad for the Knicks. I'm not going to say that he played well enough to not be above this PR, but when you get traded and bought out and benched, even if you play bad, it does more for your PR and bad reality in terms of getting money or good roles when that stuff happens. So I get why that his agent or his ex-agent now said that, but he also wouldn't say that unless that's something that could realistically happen to Westbrook, him getting traded and bought out. And so my assumption this entire time for the Pacers is if they did a Westbrook trade, it would not be to have Westbrook on their team. I don't think the Pacers care about having Westbrook and in theory what he would add to them in terms of wins. Now, he was not good last year. He very much did not help the Lakers win games. But with the guy, the 2 seasons ago, he was very good for the Lakers. The Wizards got them into the postseason, led the league in assists, right? Like maybe he can still be that guy in a worse team where he has the ball more or is asked to be more of an aggressive guy. But the Pacers, who have Ben Mathurin, who have Tyrese Haliburton, who have Chris Duarte, young dudes who need the ball to develop, bringing in a guy like Westbrook doesn't make sense. Any trade between the Pacers and Lakers would be about the assets the Pacers get from the Lakers, good picks, unprotected picks, or 2 picks, or something like that. That would be the goal for the Pacers, not actually getting Russell Westbrook. I don't think that they would. I would not think intuitively, and based on what Westbrook's ex-agent said, that it would be something the Pacers would actually be interested in keeping him. But the follow-up part is, if they did, would he fit with Haliburton? I believe that was another question from Man here. Yes, how would it work with Haliburton? Well, here's the thing about Tyrese Haliburton, unrelated to Russell Westbrook. Tyrese Haliburton is a fantastic shooter. Not only on catch and shoots, but off the dribble. 40% both seasons of his career, 40% in 2 different situations and contexts with the Pacers and Kings. Good free throw shooter. Even if he shoots 38% next year, every indicator suggests that he will be a very good 3-point shooter for a very long time. And that means he can fit with any guard. I get that he needs the reps with the ball in his hands, and that's why you wouldn't want him with a guy like Brogdon who have the ball all the time. That's why you wouldn't want to have him with Westbrook, because the Pacers would like Haliburton to be running the show, setting up all the plays, all that sort of stuff. If by some miracle Westbrook is traded to the Pacers and plays for the franchise and actually suits up in games, I suppose he would fit fine with Haliburton if they played together. Haliburton can shoot and be off the ball and stuff like that. But the bad fit for the Pacers would be the fit between their goals and their long-term development, because Haliburton would have the ball way less. He would get less reps. He would get less reps with the new young Pacers that are on this team that need to mesh, that need to turn into a unit. So that is even more ammo to say, yes, I think Haliburton and Westbrook would fit well together. The Pacers don't want that. They don't want that to be a thing that has to fit well together. Again, this would be about assets for them, using their cap space to get draft picks that they could not get otherwise. Now, it's not our money. It's always easy to say, just buy out Russell Westbrook. And, as a fan, you don't care how much Herb Simon spends. You want him to spend all the money in the world. Cutting a $40+ million check to have a guy not play for your team is a lot of bones. Trading away, if it was Hield and Turner for Westbrook, in theory, Hield has about $40 million left on his deal. Turner's got 18. That's sending out $58 million total for $47 million total. Maybe that makes it a little more palpable, but in general, that's the hardest part of this trade is, holy crap, you're eating a ton of money that is giving you absolutely nothing. So while in the rosiest of circumstances, maybe Russ and Haliburton fit, there are a lot of factors that say he makes no sense on the Pacers at all. If they can agree to that buyout, that makes the most sense, because even if he could bring some stuff to the team, he was actively harming the Lakers' chance of winning very often last season, and his fit with Haliburton, while it could be okay on the court right now, would not be beneficial for the Pacers long term. So this trade, people keep asking, why are people covering this Westbrook thing? Why would he even play for this team? Well, it makes no sense for him to suit up for this team. So I would not imagine that being a thing for the Pacers as this season trudges along. We got one more on the Westbrook front from Kevin Rhodes, who says, hear me out. I do not want Westbrook to play a minute for the Pacers, but would it not be absolutely hilarious to see Westbrook break the single-season franchise scoring and assists record, and then for Pritchard to say, thanks, do not come back? That is not unreasonable. I mean, I don't think he would break any sort of franchise records this year, just given his scoring and assist numbers as of right now. But I mean, he would put up some numbers on this Pacers team. I mean, what he was doing on OKC teams with no talent was insane. Like his totals from that season, he led the league and made shots. 4 years ago, he was making over 600 shots a game, dishing out like 700 to 800 assists in one season. I mean, that is banana stuff. If you go to the Pacers, like they aren't even getting close to that. Haliburton played 77 games last season and got to 628 assists. Like he was like 150 away from what Westbrook was doing on some lesser good teams in OKC and in Washington. So yeah, he would put up numbers. I mean, he would certainly, probably not, I don't think he'd set Pacers franchise records. I mean, they don't have enough good play finishers to help him get an assist title or a scoring title or anything like that. In a really, really weird world where Westbrook is the guy with the ball all the time for the Pacers. Again, this does not make any sense, but in this hypothetical question, yes, that would be funny because, again, they would not like to have him play. So Pritchard would be in full right to say, yeah, don't come back. We do not want you on this team. We would like to continue our youth movement to build with young players and to build with the picks that the Lakers sent alongside you to make this work. So that's the Russell Westbrook segment of this Mailbag show. I just think a lot of the Westbrook questions should not be about his fit with the Pacers, about anything with Westbrook for the Pacers. Think Rubio last year. That's what it seems like it would be to me. Him not actually playing for the Pacers at all. Maybe it's a John Wall situation where he's on the payroll and things like that. They don't waive him. They don't buy him out. But he's not playing. He's not around. That even makes some sense. Like what's the point? It's kind of a distraction at that point. It's not, you're not doing anything of value to the team, and just go away, work on your game. Maybe something materializes at the deadline. We'll buy it then. Who knows? That sort of makes more sense to me than anything happening imminently. But I don't think this trade makes sense to have Westbrook on the team anyway. It's all about the assets. And I think most people know that, but I've gotten enough questions about it that I felt like I need to clarify and specify that point as this offseason continues. One more segment here today on the team building questions I got in my mailbag request. And these ones are thematically all about Miles Turner, a name floated often so far in these rumored Russell Westbrook packages. I've had a lot of trouble saying Russell Westbrook recently. A lot of R's in that for me. I almost just stumbled over it just now. Let's talk about Miles Turner, his future with the Pacers, and what his name means in all of this stuff. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, Locked On Colts. Indianapolis Colts training camp up and running now. I think all the players reported. I should know that. And the Locked On Colts guys, Zach Hicks, Jake Arthur, they will have all the details for you over there. Let's talk a lot about Miles Turner. Got more questions than I thought about him. And the first one is from Lee Plenty again, who says, what will it take for Miles to re-sign beyond money? That's the summation I typed. I should probably just read it. He says, money is the focal point, but how much will role clarity with consistent opportunities on the offensive side factor into Miles' decision to re-sign with Indiana? I think they have to play a big factor, right? Something he was psyched about last season. I don't know if psyched is the right word. Let me back up. Something he was hoping for and would have been psyched about last season was role clarity and having more touches on offense. And right after he came out and said that in that athletic piece with Jared Weiss, they did give him a few more touches for a few games. That went away at some point, and then he got hurt before Sabonis got traded. So it hasn't been seen yet what he can be as the solo center. But I think that would matter if they could promise him a certain amount of touches or a certain role and consistent role as the lone center. He's not going to be defending fours. He's maybe not stretched out as much. Maybe he's more involved in screen actions. I don't know what he necessarily wants. He said when he talked to us last year, for those who remember, last December, doesn't this feel like 2 years ago? It was only 6.5 months ago. Miles Turner basically described it to us in that media room after that game they played that day as a promotion, right? He said he felt like he had been in the same role with the Pacers for a long time since him and Sabonis had been playing together. And he doesn't necessarily want the Pacers to have to change anything or change any lineups. He just wanted more clarity and kind of a promotion into, hey, I've earned more clarity. I've earned a little more with this team. And I think he was right to say that, even if he doesn't deserve it. Does that make sense? But those things sound like they're competing, but I don't think that's necessarily true. I think he should have been probably the fourth option in that lineup, that starting lineup. But I also think he was right to say, hey, I've sacrificed a lot and I kind of want to do more and see what I can do with this team. We're losing a lot. Let me try to help. So I do think, and I believe this reporting to be true that's come out. This was pre-Ayton, but I do think Miles Turner was a little psyched about being a lone center and playing with Haliburton. That said, they also went after Ayton, a guy who would have started over him. That has to not be as fun to hear and understand. And I think Bob Kravitz, in his report about Miles Turner and Russell Westbrook and all that, called the Turner-Pacers relationship tenuous. I think that is a good word to describe where this is. Tenuous in this case. It's not bad. It's not unsalvageable, but it's certainly not awesome or great. So I think that role clarity, and if Turner plays in the first 5 games for the Pacers this season, if he's not dealt, and he gets more shot attempts than he was last season, and he's able to set some more ball screens, maybe get the ball from a dynamic passer like Haliburton on the roll, and it's clicking really well, and he feels great about it, yeah, that would help, I think, especially if he can continue to start in that role. But that's going to be hard for the Pacers to do. They also have Ben Mather on this team. They've got young guys that they need to give the ball to. So this time for Turner, it's not that he'd be the fourth option in a starting 5. It's that their goals for how they run their offense, how they plan things out would be different. So yes, I do think that if he can get that promotion, as he was calling it, get more role clarity and play well with the new franchise cornerstone in Tyrese Haliburton, yes, that would be appealing to him for his future with the Pacers or not. But it's kind of hard for me to imagine all those things breaking the right way for Miles Turner to get exactly what makes a lot of sense, even though I think that it is possible. And I think that him playing for the Pacers this year is still a very solid possibility. Another question about Miles Turner from Mad Martin again said, who would replace Miles? This was in a question about Russell Westbrook. So I'll just throw this on the back of this. Look, the Pacers are in an interesting spot with their front court where they have Isaiah Jackson and Jalen Smith and O'Shea Brissett and Terry Taylor and Goga Bitadze. I think if they traded away Miles, they would just roll with those guys. I think that makes a lot of sense. I don't know who would start at the 5. I think that's an interesting discussion. I think Isaiah Jackson has the best future of any of those guys, but he's not ready for start at the 5, bang with bigs kind of minutes. So I don't know if maybe they would try Goga, give him a chance for a little bit to start the season. If that's not working, maybe try Isaiah Jackson then. But they also have Daniel Tice on this team, who is a good enough screener and useful enough piece that could, in theory, be helpful to a team that has Ben Mathurin and Tyrese Haliburton to ball out and making their lives easier with good screens. Maybe they would want to give him minutes in a situation where they don't have Miles Turner on the roster. And if that is the case, which, again, a good screener is very valuable to young players, I think that would make some sense to try to find him the time there. So what do they do to replace Miles? Probably internal candidates. Which ones? I'm not so sure because maybe they want to try Isaiah Jackson at the 4. Maybe, I don't know how they're going to hierarchically rank their fives that aren't Miles Turner. It seems like to me it would be Isaiah Jackson, your backup, go behind him, and then Tice is your deep bench guy. But that's if you have Miles. If you don't, you would like to maybe get a vet in there for some minutes. And that's if Tice is even on the team. Who knows what his future looks like? That's just my prediction for what it would look like if they moved on from Tice, but who knows? The last one here comes from Happy Pacers fan. We bookend the show with Sad Pacers Kid and Happy Pacers fan. How about that for full circle moments? Kind of talked about this one yesterday, ironically, with Tim talking Lakers Pacers. He said, would Miles and Anthony Davis be the best defensive front court in the league? Great question. I would say second best behind Batadze and Jalen Smith. No, I'm kidding. I actually would say second best if I'm being serious. I think it could be the best. I mean, that would be because Miles Turner has been really good for the Pacers at a lot of stuff that's like bailing out teammate stuff, like recoveries from the weak side and, really dramatic drop coverage. And he's got really good length to disturb stuff. That kind of stuff is hard. And it's even harder when your teammates suck at keeping guys in front of them. And I don't want to say that the Pacers sucked at that. That was a dramatic word. They did at times last season. There were other times, prior to last season where they didn't suck at it, but they were not particularly good at it. He was bailing out guys a lot. Next to Anthony Davis, even LeBron is not like an elite defender anymore, but he's still a solid defender. Austin Reeves, some of the other guys on that team, I mean, he would not have to deal with that as much. He would not be bailing out other guys as often. Anthony Davis is an all-world defender, one of the best 5 on the planet when healthy. That partnership would be incredible, especially in situations where they can both kind of lurk 15 feet and in. Like if they're both guarding non-shooters, good luck. Good luck scoring on that team. And I think having a threat behind AD would help the Lakers a lot. I mean, we talked about this with Tim yesterday, but the best lineup the Lakers have had, they won a championship with Marc Gasol on their team. And he was a good defensive anchoring big who would kind of unlock Anthony Davis on both ends of the floor. Yes, I think Miles and AD would be awesome. I think they'd be the second best front court defensive duo behind Pacers Central Division rivals Milwaukee. Giannis, amazing defender, also all-world, and Brook Lopez, an absolute stud defender. And I would not say on aggregate that, if you did a sum, like if you gave arbitrary ranking numbers to Brook Lopez's defense, Miles Turner's defense, Anthony Davis's, and Giannis's, I might actually give the sum advantage of those numbers to the Lakers duo. But the synergy between Giannis kind of being that free safety and Brook Lopez and the role he has on the Bucks, role dependent, I think is better. And that's why that part of why that team has been absolutely incredible for years and years, and a reason they will be in the title conversation this year again. Even though they lost in the second round last season, they didn't have Chris Middleton. They still took the Eastern Conference champions to 7 games. Now I'm just venting about the Bucks because I think they're getting slept on in the national conversation these days. That is all for the questions about team building and free agency. Thursday's show will be the second part of this mailbag. We got a lot of questions about young players fit together, Ben Mathurin, who will grow the most, and some random questions for me, like what case I would pick in Deal or No Deal. I'm excited to talk about that one and some Deal or No Deal theory, so you won't want to miss that. Tomorrow, guest James Boyd from the Indy Star will join, and if you haven't seen on Twitter, he is going to be leaving the Indy Star Pacers beat soon, so perhaps the last time he'll be on the show, which is why I'm really psyched to have him on one more time to talk about his finality of thoughts on the rest of this Pacers offseason, the big storyline still to monitor with this team, and just in general, his time on the beat, because it's fun to reflect on that sort of stuff. So you won't want to miss that. And James is always fun to talk to, one of my better friends in the media landscape in Indy. So thank you guys a ton for listening today. And if you submitted questions, thank you so much. I'll, of course, tag you on Twitter, and thank you for making this show possible and easier. We'll be back tomorrow, like I said, talking with James. Until then, have a good one.